We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Monday. We're starting out another week. It's going to be a busy week. I'm still here in Georgia. I'll be headed home on Tuesday afternoon, be back Tuesday night, and then things will get back to normal with regards to the Rational Boomer podcast. The interesting thing, though, is that on Tuesday, which is January 9th, that is when arguments are going to be heard with regards to Donald Trump's immunity, absolute immunity. Those arguments are going to be brought to the appellate court, and then shortly thereafter, they're going to have to make the decision. Does Donald Trump have immunity? Well, no, of course he doesn't have immunity, and there's no way the appellate court is going to suggest that he does. So shortly after he gets that decision, it will go to the Supreme Court. That should probably get done in pretty quick order because the Supreme Court knows how time is of the essence. They're dealing with the situation with regards to the ballots in Colorado and taking Donald Trump off the ballots. They'll address this one, and this will be the simple one for them. There's no way they're going to give Donald Trump immunity. And I'm looking forward to that day when they say, no, Donnie, that's bullshit. You don't have immunity. Donnie's going to be big mad. He thinks at least three of those justices owe him a favor. And Donnie wants to call in that favor now, only the fact of the matter is that quid pro quo shouldn't work when it comes to the Supreme Court. And frankly, this is such a stupid decision, they can't even get this wrong. There's no way they can make this look like Donnie has a point. They're going to find that he doesn't have immunity, and that's going to fuck up a lot of Donald Trump's defenses in a number of cases. Now, the ballot situation, that's interesting. I don't know what's going to happen with that. I mean, theoretically, the Colorado Supreme Court laid out a pretty good case. It's going to be a little work for them to not agree with the Colorado Supreme Court. Now, that's not to say they won't disagree with the Colorado Supreme Court. This one's a little messy because if they decide with the Colorado Supreme Court, then they're pretty much deciding that Donald Trump can no longer run for president. And some people would look at that as interfering with an election, albeit legal. And you know, the Supreme Court doesn't like to get involved in messes. They prefer to do shit behind closed doors, presuming we don't know, and then they're cool with that. But when it's up front and in the public, they're a little nervous about that. Now, remember, the Supreme Court kind of did decide a presidential election back with George W. Bush and Al Gore. Remember that deal down in Florida? Yeah, they've done it before, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do in this case. And as I told you before, Donald Trump and Alina Baba, or Haba, or whatever the fuck her name is, they are kind of leaning on the Supreme Court justices. Alina Haba basically said the three justices that Donald Trump appointed owe Donnie a favor. They need to side with him. And that sounds a little quid pro quo-ish, you know, which in fact is illegal in this circumstance. And Donald Trump just went full out and said, you better side with me or there's going to be big trouble. I'm curious as to what big trouble there's going to be. Should we take that as direct threats against the Supreme Court? Whoops, there's another crime. That one's going to be an interesting one. If you're worried about the immunity thing, don't. That's going to go to the appellate court later this week. They're going to decide it's bullshit. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. They're going to come down and say it's bullshit. And then that will be off the table completely. And frankly, I'm tired of fucking hearing about it. Ever since Donald Trump was under the gun, he kept talking about executive privilege, immunity, absolute immunity. Court after court told him that's bullshit. Finally, we're getting to the end of this train of bullshit, and the Supreme Court will settle it finally, and then there's no place to go for Donald Trump. That'll be off the table. It's not to say he won't still be talking about it, but the fact of the matter is nobody else will care because it's absolute ridiculousness. All right. We do have some emails. Always love the emails. First one comes from Terry. Hello from Canada. Absolutely love your show. You give me faith in the American people. 33 years as a truck driver, a lot of it in the States. So to me, it's very sad to see what's going on there. I can't believe the stupidity of the Trumplafucks. Anyway, just a shout out. I listen to you on TikTok and your podcast, Terry. Well, thanks very much, Terry. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the hard work you do or did as a truck driver. Damn, I would not want to do that. The only time I ever drove a truck when I was about 19 or 20, I had a part time job with a company that handled mail for big companies. And there was this big box truck that the company had. And the boss said to me, "Do you know how to drive that truck?" I go, "I've never driven a truck like that. I don't have a truck's license." He goes, "Well, that's cool. I want you to drive this down to the post office." Well, I've always been driving small cars at that point. So they put me in this big box truck. I don't know what the fuck is happening. I take it down to the post office with this truckload of mail, and I got to back it into a spot. I can't drive it frontwards, let alone backwards. I did that a couple of times. And I told him, I said, "Listen, man, I don't want to do this anymore." "Well, we kind of need you." I said, "Yeah, well, you kind of need a license, and you're going to get in trouble, and I'm going to get in trouble." And that made him think. He's probably thinking to himself, that little motherfucker was going to talk. And he's right, because I did not want to do that shit. I did not want to quit the job because I needed the money, but I did not want to drive a big box truck because I had no business doing it. All right, the next email. "Hi, Boomer. And I'm saying when Trump isn't the nominee, I'll come to you where you are with a Sharpie. We'll eat a few cheeseburgers at your favorite joint, and then you can write 'Boomer was right' on my giant forehead. You can even film it, and the burgers are on me." Okay. That'll be a small price to pay for that correct prediction and for your excellent services in arrears. I'd ask that we do that in Savannah, as I'm not even sure where Minnesota is, and non-permanent ink would be great. I don't think either of us really want your name on my forehead for an extended period. Nah, you don't really need to pay that debt. Let me just give you shit. I'll give you shit. I don't want to write on other people's body. That seems a little weird, a little awkward, don't you think? He ends it by saying, "Fuck Trump best." Of course, Garage Door Jeff. Garage Door Jeff, you're kind of a character. I probably prefer not to write on your body, even if you have a very large forehead. I don't need that to relish or wallow in my being correct. Now, we don't even know I'm going to be correct here. And if you think that if I'm wrong, you're going to come right in my forehead, you're fucking mistaken. I don't let anybody write on my body. I got enough issues. I don't need some crazy fucking uh, magic marker on my forehead. I mean, because literally, I wear the hat all the time. And the only reason I did it is because I started doing it and then I never stopped it. And then I'm doing it on the TikToks and it kind of stuck with it. When I was younger, I never used to wear uh, hats, never. Till my doctor said, "Listen, man, you got a bald spot. If you don't wear a hat during the summer, you're going to get cancer." So I took him at his word. But if I take off my hat, you can see I got a pretty good sized forehead too. A lot of area, not only to write words, maybe draw a picture. Yeah, I don't want to do that. That's not happening, Jeff. A gentleman's agreement, a gentleman's bet doesn't involve writing on one another's body. Seems a little weird to me. Just saying. Anyway, the next email comes from Barbara. "Hi, Mike. Just want you to know that I tape about 7 different news shows, mostly on MSNBC. Now that my brother turned me on to you, I can delete all but 2 or 3 my favorite newscasters. You put so much truth into one nutshell, and you're so articulate and wise. I love watching your TikToks. Thank you very much for all you do and say to put my mind at ease. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I don't know that I'm worthy of all those accolades, but I appreciate it. And as I've said before, by going on TikTok, I wasn't sure what I was going to accomplish by being on TikTok. I didn't know what good I might do. And I'm a little surprised that people listen to what I say and they are put at ease. I had no idea that people were that anxious about all that was going on. Sure, I know it's fucked up, but it's never something I worried about. We were just going to do what we had to do. We were going to fight back, and right always wins. Truth always wins. So I was never worried about it. I know there are some people out there that are very anxious and get worried. I get the emails all the time and the DMs. I can't sleep, but you help me calm down. If I do nothing else on TikTok, if I never get another follower, I get another view, at least I can say I accomplished something that was doing good for somebody else. And for that, I'm thankful to have that opportunity. All right. The next email says congressional leaders reach a deal that would avert a government shutdown. Now, we're going to talk about that in a minute because I know a lot of people were anxious about the government shutdown. We got close to 2 government shutdowns before. I told you, don't worry about it. Something will be figured out. They had 2 continuing resolutions. Now we're coming toward the middle of January, and another shutdown is impending. But it sounds like they may have worked something out, more so with the higher ups, Mike Johnson in the House, Schumer in the Senate. Still got to get voted on, so we're not out of the woods completely. The emailer goes on and says, hey, Mike, it appears that Speaker Johnson's days are numbered, LOL. This is going to be an entertaining week. Dark Brandon strikes again, James. And James is absolutely right. The last thing MAGA fucks want is for Mike Johnson to strike a deal with Joe Biden or the Democrats. They want to shut this country down. And if Mike Johnson doesn't appease them, doesn't do their bidding, there's an excellent opportunity that they might put him on the hot seat and take a vote of no confidence, much like what they did with Kevin McCarthy. Now, remember, during the last continuing resolution, they gave him a warning. Well, that was the first one. We'll let you go, but don't do it again. Well, what did he do? He did it again. And be honest with you, Mike Johnson had no fucking choice. Because if the government shuts down, the Republicans are going to take the heat. They are going to be held responsible for it. So he has to do something to keep the country open. And for what it looks like, they've come to some terms and they're going to be able to keep the country or the government open. We'll see how MAGA reacts. That came out later last night. Some point today, we'll hear some crying and pissing and moaning from the MAGA fucks. Next email. Hi, Mike. I'm not sure if you will open this for security reasons, but if you do, be prepared for the stupid, most evil shit ever. It premiered a couple of days ago on Satan's official social platform known as Truth Social. It's 2 minutes of the most satanic, evil lies. It has gotten almost 500,000 likes. It's called God Made Trump. Problem is, God made Hitler too. Trump's cult members and the GOP are too stupid to figure it out. Enjoy your family. You are my favorite podcaster. Thanks, Patty in Oregon. He has a link there, and I'm not going to pull it up here. Not that I'm worried about it. I'm kind of on a roll here, and I don't want to stop that. Basically, I think what he's talking about, I know what he's talking about. Donald Trump is flailing. He is freaking out. And he's trying to play to the evangelicals. He was up there and he says, I believe God put me here to fight against the Democrats and save this country. Yeah, God's only worried about America. He's not thinking about Israel and Gaza. He's not thinking about Ukraine and Russia. He's not concerned about all that shit. He's worried about Donald Trump and America. Sounds about right. So anyway, That's an interesting story and not a surprising story because, as I've said before, Donald Trump is losing his shit. He is starting to do things that don't make any sense because he doesn't know where to go. His normal strategies are just not working. All right, the next email says, "Hi, Mike. Donald Trump might have just said the one thing to get Iowans not to back him in the caucus. On Saturday at a rally, he said that the shooting in Perry was a horrible thing, but we have to move on." I have that story coming up too. Telling the people of Iowa to move on after a sixth grader was just killed won't go over well in Iowa. I would fucking hope not. It is like you say, let Donnie speak and he will fuck himself every time. And he does. Yeah, Donnie doesn't really stay on script too well. And he usually fucks it up when he does go off script. Emailer continues on. "I heard about Lauren Boebert attacking her husband at a restaurant in Colorado. Got that story coming up too. I've also heard she's now under criminal investigation for it. She better get used to being under investigation as more are coming. She has barely been a candidate in her new district and she's already embarrassing herself. I'm sure her days as an elected congresswoman are numbered." Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Even before this incident, I think she was pretty much done. The email goes on. "I actually got called for a poll on the caucus. It came up as a restricted number, which I answered because I was curious. I was asked only one question: what was the likelihood I'd be attending the Republican caucus? It had four answers. Would I very likely be going, likely be going, might or might not go, or not going? When I said I might go, they ended the poll. I wonder what else they would have asked. Once again, you can't trust polls. No, you can't." Lastly, Hawk on TikTok. I don't know if you know who Hawk is. Hawk is a lawyer out in San Francisco. Great hair, good looking guy. Hate the motherfucker. No, I'm kidding. I like Hawk. He's a good dude and he does a good job. Um, Lastly, Hawk on TikTok again pointed out something interesting. I'm sure I'm not going to explain it as well as he did. He said typically in court cases, when they are dealing with appeals, they only rule on the verdict and other issues involving procedures or interpretation of the laws. The Supreme Court is going to have trouble if they try to twist it so Donnie is clear. Hawk said that the one issue they normally wouldn't touch is that the judge in Colorado found that Donnie is an insurrectionist. Yeah, they'll probably stay away from that. The courts normally don't review finding or facts in court cases. In the Colorado case, the judge ruled it is a fact that Donnie incited an insurrection. The Supreme Court might have no choice but to declare Dirty Diaper Donnie ineligible for the presidency. I wonder how the Trump-a-fucks will try to spin that as a win for Donnie. Well, it's definitely not a win for Donnie. If the Supreme Court does, in fact, find for the Colorado Supreme Court, Donnie is, for all intents and purposes, off that ballot and any number, if not all, the other ballots. And Donald Trump is out of the election. Even if you wanted to go as the third party, the rule on the 14th Amendment, the third section, is that anybody that has done things with insurrection and rebellion cannot hold office. Now, I suppose he could be in the election, but it doesn't matter. Should he win, he can't hold office. So he would be done at that point. He signs off as "Thanks, Eric." And you all know Eric. He's been on the show even recently. He's our guy from Iowa. And we'll be talking to him more as we get closer to the caucus. What are we, about a week away, a little more than a week away? I'm kind of underwhelmed about the Iowa caucus based on something Eric told me or told us. He said Iowa has never picked a president for like 50 years. Anybody they've picked never really became the president of the United States. So I'm not getting too worried about it. Democrats aren't really in play here because there is no primaries as much as some of these little fucks like my guy from Minnesota want a primary Joe Biden. It's not going to work. And the Republicans will be holding this primary. The weird thing about it is Donald Trump is way, way ahead. DeSantis and Nikki Haley are kind of tighter in the race, but they're so far behind Donald Trump. I don't know how any of them think they can win, honestly. But again, we're getting all this information from polls, so who the fuck knows? Now, if Donald Trump lost the Iowa caucus to DeSantis or um, Nikki Haley, that would be fucking hilarious because he's got trouble in New Hampshire, which is up next. Now, I heard some rumor online that Ron DeSantis is already considering bowing out of the race. The rumor says that he's going to make that announcement on January 15th, which is a week away, right around the time of the Iowa caucus. I presume if he loses the Iowa caucus, and he most certainly will, then he'll step away from the presidential run. I don't know if that's true. It wouldn't surprise me if it is. Ronnie's getting his ass kicked at this point, and he has little or no chance. Things get worse for him every day. He's not going to be the nominee. And even if he was the nominee, there's no way he could become president of the United States. He just doesn't have it. He's weird. He's awkward. He's creepy. Ron DeSantis doesn't have a prayer. And frankly, I don't think Nikki Haley does either. I would not be surprised if we get to September, October, that there's a candidate or a nominee for the Republican Party that we aren't even talking about right now. That's conceivable. Of course, it could be Donald Trump if he survives. And when I say survive, I'm not talking necessarily mortally. I'm talking physically and mentally, legally. There's a lot of things Donald Trump has to deal with leading up to the 2024 election. And I don't know that he can handle it. Honestly, I don't. All right, a story that I promised you. House and Senate leaders on Sunday announced a spending deal for government funding in 2024, the first step to averting a shutdown later this month, even as the threat still out there. Now, this is interesting to me because I just figured they'd come up with another continuing resolution, give themselves another couple of months, and then do nothing about it like they've been doing all along. But apparently, there's some agreement between Mike Johnson and Chuck Schumer, but it has to go through the House and the Senate and get voted on. Senate, we might be all right. The House, a little different story because the House is so divided, they are hard pressed to get anything done. In order to get something done, they usually need the Democrats' help. Now, in this circumstance, the Democrats probably will help. They want to make sure the country doesn't get shut down. And if Chuck Schumer's okaying it, probably all of the Democrats in the House will jump on board, and then it will pass pretty easily. MAGA will cry and whine, and then they'll talk about getting a vote of confidence on Mike Johnson and try to run him out. Well, good luck with that. It took forever to get some no-name crazy fuck to be your Speaker of the House. If you kick out Johnson, who's it going to be now? There ain't nobody. So it will be very interesting to see what they do. All right, the top line numbers agreed to by the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer include 1.59 trillion for fiscal year 2024, with 886 billion for defense spending and 704 in non-defense spending. They also agreed to a $69 billion side deal in the adjustments that will go toward non-defense domestic spending. Imagine that. More than half of the budget is going to the Defense Department. Is that necessary? Well, it's necessary to keep the military industrial complex running in full profit, but that's about it. Does this country need to spend that much money on defense? No, they don't. Nobody that's behind them is even close, and most of them are allies. So what's the fucking point? Now, the side deal brings the non-defense spending figure to nearly 773 billion, a Democratic source told CNN, with spending close to 1.66 trillion overall. While their agreement on funding levels will reduce the chances of a shutdown, there are still major hurdles facing Congress ahead of the two funding deadlines, January 19th and February 2nd. So while there's been some headway made, we're not out of the woods yet. And I will stand by what I've said before. No way the Republicans allow this country to shut down. One of those hurdles is how to deal with the demands by conservatives to use the funding bill as leverage to impose more stringent immigration and border security demands. Congress will still have to approve funding bills or a stopgap resolution to avoid a shutdown by the deadlines, and it remains uncertain how the effort will play out, even though Schumer and Johnson have a deal on funding levels. Like I said, the two top guys have agreed, but that doesn't mean Republican members of Congress are going to get behind it. It's too divisive. The far right House Freedom Caucus called the deal negotiated between the House and Senate leaders a total failure. Of course, they did, presenting a challenge for Johnson, who was leading an extremely narrow majority. The opposition from the group, which is a loud and strong contingent in the House GOP conference, makes the goal of averting a government shutdown even more of a headache. Yeah, like I say, there's an agreement with the bosses, as it were, but we're not out of the woods. And why? Because of the Freedom Caucus, because of the crazy, dumbass Trump-la-fucks. They don't want the government to stay open. They want to shut it down. They want to create chaos. They want to create diversion and distraction to somehow help Donald Trump. Well, it's not going to help Donald Trump. It's going to hurt all Republicans, and these dumb motherfuckers don't even understand that. Freedom Caucus members have been adamant that spending levels be cut dramatically past what congressional leaders announced Sunday. They're not happy with the deal that Johnson and Schumer cut. Now, Johnson, in a letter to his Republican colleagues Sunday, wrote, "We have secured hard-fought concessions to unlock the FY24 top-line numbers and allow the Appropriations Committee to finally begin negotiating and completing the 12 annual appropriations bills." The concessions from Democrats, he said, include an additional $10 billion in cuts to the IRS mandatory funding for a total of $20 billion, which was a key part of the Democrats' Inflation Reduction Act. In addition, we will cut $6.1 billion from Biden's administration's continued COVID-era slush funds, which we achieved despite fierce oppositions. So you're taking money out of COVID, and COVID isn't the issue it once was. And the interesting thing to me is you want to take money away from the IRS. You want to hamstring the IRS. Here's the weird thing about it and why it was in the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a lot of people out there that aren't paying their taxes, and there aren't enough IRS agents to go out and track it down and get it back. So the United States is short that money. Now, why the Republicans are against it can only be that they're afraid that their rich benefactors are going to get caught up in whatever tax schemes they're involved and will be forced to pay their taxes, which they should be doing anyway, which if they were, we'd be in a much better place in this country. We could do a lot of the things the Democrats want to do if only the rich people actually paid their taxes. But we know from this circumstance right here, Republicans do not want rich people to have to pay taxes. Schumer, meanwhile, said in a statement with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries that the agreement on non-defense discretionary spending will allow Democrats to protect key domestic priorities: veterans benefits, health care, and nutrition assistance from the draconian cuts sought by the right wing. It will also allow us to keep the investments for hardworking American families secured by the legislative achievements of President Biden and congressional Democrats. We have made clear to Speaker Mike Johnson that Democrats will not support including poison pill policy changes in any of the 12 appropriations bills put before Congress. Joe Biden said Sunday the bipartisan funding framework congressional leaders have move us one step closer to preventing a needless government shutdown and protecting important national priorities. It reflects the funding levels that I negotiated with both parties and signed into law last spring. Now, again, you'll get some people coming out and saying, oh, it's over, we're settled, it's going to be a good thing. And in normal Congresses, in normal times, when the leaders of the respective parties come together and get an agreement, typically the parties will fall in line behind their leaders. Democrats behind Schumer, Republicans behind Mike Johnson. But of course, we know that the Republicans in the House very divided. We've got a small percentage of them that don't like Mike Johnson. They don't like the idea that he's negotiating and compromising with the Democrats. They are not going to like anything short of draconian cuts which hurt the people of this country. That's what they want. And they're not going to be happy unless they get it. I got some bad news for them because they aren't going to get it. The Republicans are scared to death about shutting the country down. They have little or no chance in the 2024 election. By shutting the government down, they will get the blame and they'll be done in 2024. All hope, even if it's minuscule, will be gone. That won't happen. They won't do it. MAGA's going to be pissed. The question is, what will MAGA do? Will they try to take down Mike Johnson? I would say yes, but I don't know what their fucking options are. Who else are you going to get to be dumb enough to take this fucking job? All right, we are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Back for the second half of the Rational Boomer podcast for January 8th. A lot of stuff to talk about, in spite of the fact that we're coming out of a weekend. Some dumb shit on behalf of the Republican Party. And who's dumber than Lauren Boebert? Now, it's a close race between Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I think Lauren Boebert is dumber. At least Marjorie Taylor Greene, as criminal as she is and as dumb as she is, I think she went to college. Lauren Boebert, on the other hand, didn't finish high school, had to get her GED at the last moment before she took office as a representative for the 3rd District in Colorado. Now, she's going through some shit. She doesn't think she could win in the 3rd District, so she's moving to the 4th District as if they haven't heard all the stupid bullshit that she's done. Well, even before she gets settled into the 4th District, more bullshit is coming out. You heard the story. The story is that Lauren Boebert was back in her home state in a small town in Colorado called Silt. Silt. The fuck kind of name is that for a town? Anyway, she's in this town of Silt. She goes into a restaurant/bar. She runs into her ex-husband, and kerfuffle ensues. Apparently, they're not getting along, hence the reason why they are now divorced. Well, Lauren got a little out of hand. You know, she's big on groping guys in theaters, but apparently in restaurants, she's all about punching guys because apparently she punched her ex-husband twice in the nose. Now, don't feel too bad about her husband because he is a piece of shit too. I mean, this is the kind of relationship they have, and proof that it was probably a good idea that they got a divorce. Nonetheless, for Representative Lauren Boebert to do something like this, well, that's assault and battery. That's a criminal charge. It could also impact whether or not she's allowed to have a gun as well. So Representative Lauren Boebert denied hitting her ex-husband after reports surfaced claiming that the two were involved in a physical altercation on Saturday. Police are investigating the incident between the Congresswoman and Jason Boebert that took place at a restaurant in Silt, Colorado. Now, neither one of them were arrested, but that doesn't mean anything. Mike Kite, chief of the Silt Police Department, told the Washington Post that police are reviewing surveillance tape and talking to possible witnesses. Isn't that always the way with Lauren Boebert? Somebody says she's groping a guy in a theater and she says, "No, I'm not." And then all of a sudden a video comes out. And apparently there's some video of her punching her ex husband. And she's already said, "That never happened." Now, American Muckrakers, a political action committee that works toward ousting politicians, including Boebert, from Congress, posted about the incident on X or Twitter or whatever the fuck that night, claiming that the representative punched her ex-husband in the face twice and then continued to attack him. Now, in a statement to the Post, Boebert denied her ex-husband's claims. "I'll be consulting with my lawyer about the false claims." "Oh, I bet you will." "And that he made against me, and evaluate all my legal options." You know what your legal option is? To go to fucking jail, you stupid bitch. Now, on Sunday, Jason Boebert addressed the conflict and told the Daily Beast that he made a mistake. "We both overacted. I only want what's best for the boys, and I still love her very much. We both share some hurt deep down inside. It seems we just keep pushing each other further apart," he continued. "It's probably the best that I remain silent." You made a mistake. I got to tell you, motherfucker, I've been hit in the nose a couple times. Yeah, there's no mistake in that. That shit hurts and that shit bleeds. And it doesn't matter whether you're trying to back out of it, because apparently there's surveillance video, and that will be proof enough for the police. If Lauren Boebert laid her hands on her husband, she's got a world of trouble. There's going to be a court case, and she's going to be in the thick of it. Fortunately, she probably won't be in Congress, so she'll have plenty of time. I'm sure Jason realized that with Lauren Boebert getting hit with this thing, that might hit his pocketbook, because she no doubt has to pay some money for the kids. And of course, he loves the kids. What are you doing in a bar, motherfucker? Fighting with your ex? What are you doing in a bar fighting with your ex if you're so much in love with your kids? And what the fuck are they doing? We've heard some stories about those little bastards too. Jason Boebert also told the Denver Post that they were working through a difficult conversation. "I guess. I've been married 40 years. I've had some difficult conversations with my wife, probably today, but none of it has come to blows." I always say, my wife, I could probably take her, but it would be a hell of a fight. But I would never do anything to harm my wife, regardless of how mad I was. And my wife would never do it either. I mean, that's what two normal, reasonable people do. They might argue, it might get out of hand, they might get loud, but you don't resort to throwing hands. Having met with Lauren Boebert, she was 16 when they met, and Jason Boebert was 22, meaning he was a pedophile. The two got married in 2005 before getting a divorce last year due to irreconcilable differences. Together, they have 4 sons, 1 grandson, according to the Denver Post. Lauren Boebert racked up at least 4 arrests and summons for petty crimes prior to her congressional career. And Business Insider reported Jason Boebert was arrested and charged with public indecency and lewd exposure in 2005. One of his sons has also accused Jason Boebert of being violent toward him in 2022. Well, what a nice family. I remember seeing a video one time of a guy in their neighborhood calling the cops because Boebert's kid was racing up and down the street at high speeds on a motorcycle, mini bike. I don't know what it was, but he was going back. Excuse me. And he was going back and forth, and they were complaining. And of course, Jason Boebert came down to settle things down. He started ranting and raving, threatened to kick the shit out of the neighbors. And then when he finally took off, he did it and ran over a mailbox. So we're not dealing with a very stable crew of people. Violence seems to be their go to in almost any situation, at least the threat of violence. So now, when they pull down this video and they see that Lauren Boebert actually punched her ex husband in the face twice, and God knows what else she did, I'd be interested to see what he did. He doesn't sound like the kind of guy that would be bigger than that and just take it. I got to have a feeling that he somehow kind of got a little rough too. Anyway, this will show up on the video. Lauren Boebert, Representative Lauren Boebert, a congresswoman, may go to trial, may get arrested, go to trial, and be convicted of physical abuse, spousal abuse. Actually, it's not spousal abuse because they're not married anymore. What a fucking mess. You know, people have said, you shouldn't expect more out of politicians. They're just people. Well, I expect you to be decent human beings. And Lauren Boebert and Jason Boebert and her kids have proven that they are not normal, decent human beings. This is just the next step in the demise of Lauren Boebert. She's not going to get reelected. She's likely to be indicted by Jack Smith for insurrection or that whole incident. And now she's likely to be indicted and charged and go to trial over beating up her husband, assault and battery, I guess you would call it. So Lauren's future does not look too bright. And this is all after the fact that apparently her restaurant that she once had is no longer there. I don't know if when bankruptcy or she closed it up or whatever. Lauren Boebert's going to have to look for a job after the 2024 election. It'll be interesting to see if anybody is willing to hire her. Maybe OAN or Newsmax or even Fox. You know, she's a relatively young and relatively attractive woman, but she's a nutcase. Let's see if they can fucking deal with her. All right, here's another story we were talking about. Former President Donald Trump expressed his condolences for the victims of last week's Iowa school shooting and then urged them to get over it. Your child has just been killed. You know, it's too bad and I'm sorry, but God damn it, get over it. Get over it. My mother in law had a famous saying, and I make fun of it all the time with my wife, and my wife hated it too. My mother in law, you have to understand, was a lot like my father, kind of a narcissist, really didn't care about other people. Frankly, she was a horrible person. And you're probably saying, well, you wouldn't say that if your wife were around. Oh, yeah, I would. I've said it to her, and she agrees with me. She's kind of in the same situation I am with my late father. But she used to, anytime she was confronted about something she did and she didn't want to deal with it, she would say, build a bridge, get over it. Always had to be a little clever, like she made that up. Anyway, Donald Trump thinks parents in Iowa should just get over it. He said it's a very terrible thing that happened. Trump said at a campaign event in Iowa on Friday, and it's just horrible to see that happening. It's just horrible. This guy talks like an eighth grader. It's so surprising to see it here, but you have to get over it. You have to move forward. We have to move forward. But to the relatives and all the people who are so devastated right now to a point they can't breathe, they can't live, we are all with you. All the, hold on, all the way. This guy can't even offer condolences without making it about himself. And you know what he's doing here, don't you? Oh, this is a tragic thing. We're thinking about all the uh, all the tragedy with the shooting. But hey, don't forget about the caucus and voting for Donald Trump. Don't forget about that. Now, on January 4th, a sixth grader was killed by a 17-year-old suspect at a school in Perry, Iowa. 5 others were wounded, including the school's principal. Trump, who's running for president this year's election, called himself pro-gun during the NRA's annual meeting in April and vowed to be the most pro-Second Amendment president ever. A month later, Trump spoke at the NRA convention in Dallas and proposed that teachers should carry guns in an effort to discourage mass shooters. I always love that um, solution that Republicans put out there. Yeah, we should just have teachers carry guns. Really? My wife was a teacher. She wouldn't touch a gun if you forced her. She would quit the business if she had to touch a gun. And secondly, you don't pay teachers enough as it is. Are you going to kick up the pay if you're going to make them paid assassins or at least security guards in addition to trying to teach your children? Come on, motherfucker. You can come up with a better answer than that. He went on to say there is no sign more inviting to a mass killer than a sign that declares the school is a gun free zone, Trump said. That was in Dallas with the NRA. Wow. We should have more guns in schools, and that would waylay school shootings. Please, motherfucker. Teachers have enough to do dealing with parents that aren't willing to back them up, administrations that won't back them up, and kids that are out of control. And why? Because of shitty parents. Now you want them to carry guns? What about when a kid gets out of hand? Maybe he's high and he takes a swing at one of the teachers, and the teachers get scared and they pull the gun and shoot the kid. Don't say that can't happen, because there are some crazy fucking teachers too. I don't know. The answer is so simple, yet they refuse to look at it. Now, according to the Gun Violence Archive, there have been 5 mass shootings in 2024 and 8 school shootings. It's January 8th. That's this year, 2024. Anybody who says we don't have a problem is a dumb fuck. Absolutely a dumb fuck. Now, following his last rally in Iowa on Saturday night, Donald Trump went on a midnight all cap tirade aimed at Supreme Court's first judicial district judge, Arthur Engoron, accusing him of lawlessness. Oh, yeah, that Engoron, he is lawless. And, part of the problem is Judge Engoron sometime very shortly is going to decide how much Donald Trump is going to have to pay. And we know that Letitia James has upped the ante from 250 million to 375 million. And this is making Donald Trump nervous. In addition to that, she wants it so that he can't do business in New York. It's going to be a mess for Donald Trump. And as we get closer to this, he is going to be losing his shit. And people will say, well, he'll just appeal it. Yeah, he may appeal it. But the fact of the matter is he's going to have to come up with a bond. He's going to have to come up with a sum of money to make the appeal. And guess who decides how much that bond is? Yep, Judge Engoron. Now, let's say he gets hit with $375 million. That means that Donald Trump, if he was only set a bond at 10%, $37.5 million. You think Donald Trump has that in a piggy bank? I doubt it. He may have to liquidate some things or try to get his idiots, Trumplafucks, to send him money. It's going to be a tough time for Donald Trump. He may try to appeal it, but he's going to have to do some work. He's going to have to go in those dusty pockets and pull out some money in order to do it. The former president took time out of sharing clips from his Iowa speeches to rail at the judge who was overseeing the financial fraud trial that wrapped up final arguments last week, at which time New York Attorney General Letitia James increased her request for $250 million in penalties to $370 million. I think I said 375. But I mean, what's 5 million between friends? We'll just give that extra 5 to E. Jean Carroll because there's a case coming up, a second case with her. And you know what? He went out and defamed her again. So Donald Trump's going to be hemorrhaging money. Doubtless, with that in mind, the former president first attacked the valuation assignment to his Mar-a-Lago estate in a civil case before moving on to his latest rant about the unfairness of it all. Yeah, he keeps going back to how this judge undervalued his property. That's not the point of this whole fucking case. This is about fraud. He's trying to jump on something that he believes the judge said wrong, and it doesn't fucking matter. That's how scared, that's how nervous, that's how delusional Donald Trump is. He says just a small piece of Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida. New York State Judge Engeron values it at $18 million in order to help his and racist AG James corrupt and rigged case against me when it's worth 50 to 100 times that amount. No jury, no victim, only profits and success. Witch hunt. God, how many times have we heard the term witch hunt over the years? Donnie, get some more better material for Christ's sake. Moments later, he added in all caps, if Judge Engeron is allowed to disregard the complete appellate division victory that we had in June, then the rule of law in New York State and indeed our country will never recover. The judge has so disrespected the Court of Appeals in that he considers this biggest of all legal events to have never happened. That New York State and our nation as a whole cannot allow this, cannot allow this terrible wrongdoing to take place. See what I mean? He sounds like a fucking eighth grader. This is lawless by a judge that likes the likes of which our country has never seen before. He loves that turn of a phrase, like we've never seen before. A victory is a victory. Let it be, he continued. Fight violence on New York streets and stop the mass exodus of our people, our great businesses, and our wealth out of our once great state and into other far more hospitable ones. Make New York State great again. Oh man, this motherfucker is floundering, isn't he? He's absolutely floundering. What a fucking dope he is. Nothing he says is going to get him out of the shithole. He's going to get hit with a large amount of money, and then he's not going to know what to do. I've told you before, and other people have agreed with me that are smarter than me, that they think this might be the most devastating case against Donald Trump because it basically strips him of everything that he believes himself to be: rich, famous, powerful, a property baron. When they take all that away, it'll be interesting to see what's left of Donald Trump. What's left of Donald Trump, and is he worth anything at that point? I mean, frankly, he's not worth anything now, but this is going to leave him as just a shell of his former self. And frankly, his former self was pretty shitty, so it's not a bad thing for any of us. Now, talk about creepy motherfuckers. How about Stephen Miller? Remember him? He looks like a cartoon villain. Trump advisor Steve Miller exploded with anger on Fox News because he said Democrats were trying to imprison, bankrupt, and destroy Donald Trump. Well, yeah, but he deserves it. He committed crazy crimes. Stephen Miller is getting a little fucking crazy too. See how nervous he sounds? Because he might be next. And at the very least, his gravy train, Daddy Trump, will not be there to feed him money for being a fucking creep. Now, while appearing on Fox News with failed Republican candidate Kari Lake on Sunday, host Maria Bartiromo asked Miller about party nominations for president. And Stephen, the rumor is that the Democrats are going to pull Michelle Obama out of the hat during their Democratic convention this summer. That's not true. That's not going to happen. Why would Michelle Obama want to be president, especially at this time? She'd be better than Donald Trump, not as experienced as Joe Biden. That's not going to happen. Michelle Obama is a strong Democrat. She's not going to try to step on the toes of Joe Biden. It's just not going to happen. He says, well, look, I have no idea what the Democrats are going to do when they are incapacitated by a frail, aging, severely cognitively eroded Joe Biden. But what we do know is that we are witnessing election interference now in real time on two fronts. The former White House aide raised his voice as he spoke about Trump's legal problems. They're trying to imprison, bankrupt, and destroy Donald Trump using the awesome power of the state like something out of a failed third world country. And they're leaving our border wide open to import a new generation of voters that they believe will be more favorable to big government and top down control. That's their plan. And so I will tell you what is happening on the border every single day is one of the greatest crimes in human history. Yeah, wonder where Donald gets it from. From his creepy little man child that doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He's going to be out of work when Donald Trump is in jail, and he's not going to be able to find work anyplace else. Stephen Miller went on to say, and Joe and the entire Biden administration are guilty of leading an insurrection on the southern border. Well, Stephen, now apparently you don't understand the definition of an insurrection. Even if there were bad things going on down at the border, it's not an insurrection. You got to tell you what, go to the dictionary or go onto Wikipedia and see what the actual definition is. You're fucking wrong. You're supposed to be smart, but you don't know what you're talking about. But you see what they're doing. They're trying to counteract everything that they're being convicted of, or at least accused of. Donald Trump committed insurrection. Oh, yeah? Well, so is Joe Biden on the border. Nah, man, that's not happening. That's not going to work either. Stephen Miller is freaking the fuck out. He's upset. He is concerned. And it's not looking good for him. All right, former Republican Representative Liz Cheney said Sunday that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is unfit for office because of the comments he made about January 6 defendants. Now, Cheney joined Margaret Brennan on this week's Face the Nation on CBS and talked about Donald Trump and Representative Elise Stefanik before the conversation about January 6th was expanded to include the 2024 GOP presidential candidates. Now, after Cheney slammed Speaker Mike Johnson to start, she called it disgusting and outrageous that Trump and Stefanik are using the term hostage to refer to imprisoned rioters. Brian then brought up 2024 candidates and DeSantis specifically. Cheney went on to say, we have other Republican candidates for president like Ron DeSantis who have said they are open to reviewing the cases against these defendants and considering pardons for them. Yeah, Ronnie, that's not going to work for you. People saw what they saw, and those motherfuckers belong in jail. DeSantis last year said that his administration would review weaponization of government and making determinations on a case-by-case basis about whether to use pardon power after he was asked about January 6 defendants on a conservative podcast. The remarks drew major ire from the left at the time. On Sunday, Cheney replied, voters should consider such remarks as very important in deciding their vote in 2024. The notion that the Republican Party would continue its efforts to whitewash that day when the peaceful transition of power is at the core of the survival of our republic. She said, pausing in her response that was specifically about DeSantis before pointedly adding, tells you what that they are unfit for office. Now, DeSantis was the next guest on the Brennan show on Sunday, but the two did not discuss January 6th or the remarks by Cheney in the interview, which focused on immigration and the upcoming Iowa caucus. Now, this is kind of how the conversation went between Cheney and Brennan. Brennan started out by saying, we have other Republican candidates for president like Ron DeSantis who have said they're open to reviewing the cases against these defendants, considering pardons for them. Cheney says, look, the president has pardon power and pardon authority. I think that it's a very important piece that people ought to consider when they're thinking about whom they're going to vote. Someone who says that they would pardon individuals who assaulted the Capitol, who attempted to stop a constitutional process, who assaulted police officers. I mean, it was a bloody battle. I had police officers, one tell me that it was like medieval hand-to-hand combat. The notion that the Republican Party would continue its efforts to whitewash that day when the peaceful transition of power is at the core of the survival of our republic. And they want to whitewash it. Now, Representative Elise Stefanik suggested that the January 6 rioters were being treated as hostages because they were facing jail time for their crimes. Now, during a Sunday interview on Meet the Press, host Kirsten Welker asked Stefanik about her view of January 6th. Do you still think it was a tragic day? Do you think that the people who stormed the Capitol should be held responsible to the full extent of the law? Stefanik said, I have concerns about the treatment of the January 6th hostages. I have concerns. We have a role in Congress of oversight over our treatments of prisoners, even if they try to overthrow the government. I said that. And I believe that we're seeing the weaponization of the federal government against not just President Trump, but we're seeing it against conservatives. We're seeing it against Catholics, she added, which is ironic because Joe Biden is a practicing Catholic. Donald Trump is not practicing anything in terms of religion. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to serve for the Select Committee on the Weaponization of the Government. Yeah, you should be proud. You guys have accomplished fucking nothing at this point. You talk a good game, but you have a lack of evidence. When you bring people in to be questioned, you're embarrassed over and over again. I'm surprised Elise Stefanik has stepped up her voice a little bit. She could have maybe got out of this, just kept her mouth shut and maybe not been too damaged. But now she's all in and she's fucking done too. Like all the rest of the dumb fucks, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, Jim Jordan, and all the rest. Elise Stefanik is just as bad as all of them. Even if she hasn't done as much bad as Jim Jordan, she supports Jim Jordan. She supports the cause. She supports releasing insurrectionists. That is not only a crime as a representative, that is a crime against this country and each one of us. And if she is reelected to any position, that's a fucking sad day in the United States of America. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for spending the time to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.